Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I am Marcus Spar, founder of Between the Covers Coaching, and it is my special privilege to be able to work with individuals and help them to become the heroes in their stories. Before we get into our discussion here on control, I do just want to say that if you would like to have someone at your side who's helping you, mentoring you, or just being an ally to become the person, the best form of yourself, the best person that you can be, then please schedule a free 60-minute call with me. Link is in the description. And we can just talk, see how I can help, and if we're going to be a good fit for each other. Also, please give this video a like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment. If you're listening to the audio version, then please give this podcast a 5-star rating, leave a review. And if you have any questions or comments, then please just send an email to questions.btcpod@gmail.com. As I hinted at, we are going to be talking about control. And more importantly, how control is really just an illusion. And this came to mind when I was listening to a couple of podcasts today. There was one where they were talking about the Artemis 2 mission and some of the comments that were made from the astronauts who were part of that mission. And naturally, a lot of the deconstruction podcasts that I listen to, there is a lot of talk about control. So let's dive into this. Let's dive into this topic that is more pervasive than I think most of us are even aware of, and how it's having quite the impact in our lives. To begin with, what is control? Control is really a feeling or a belief that you are creating the outcomes through your own perseverance, your own work, through your own intelligence. Whatever the outcomes are that are happening around you, it's because of you. It's because of you, your group, your efforts, your community, and that is the bare bones of what control is. And it's really something that's not true, because if we consider, let's think about people in power, let's think of monarchs from the past. These people believed and thought that they were the ones who were in power and they're the ones who had control. And for some of them, that control could just be taken away so quickly. It just needed the right push. It needed the right spark in order to cause a movement that would remove their power. And I can guarantee you that anyone who has been the center of an uprising or rebellion has definitely felt like that they were suddenly out of control and there was nothing that they could do to influence the situation. I think probably the most entertaining example, for me anyways, of what control can look like is something I've already talked about, and that is the rituals that some of my friends have when they're watching the Mariners play. Again, I've mentioned my friends Katie, Ben, and Brandon, who are huge baseball fans. They love to watch the Seattle Mariners, and I happened to join them last year for one of the postseason games. And this was the one that, this is really going to show how little I remember about this. But it was the final game in a series of 7, I think, that was going to show whether or not the Mariners were going to go to the World Series, I believe. Or maybe it was in No, they didn't make it to the World Series last year. They were in like the Final Four, whatever they call that. And my friends felt like, and they truly believe, even though cognitively they're like, this really, I understand that this is actually having zero influence on people who are, gosh, over 300 miles away. Yet they will still continue to follow some of these rituals. For these friends of mine, it's wearing jerseys wearing these specific sports jerseys of some of their favorite players that they wore when they were at a game or the Mariners won a huge win that they needed to have for whatever the outcome was. For my friend Ben, he seems to think that if he's not watching the game, then he's actually going to cause the Mariners to win because they always seem to lose when he's watching. Which is kind of interesting when you think about it, because isn't the whole point of sports to watch the sports and get that enjoyment? And so actively not watching because you're concerned that if you watch it's going to cause them to lose? Anyways, that's beside the point. Why do these things stick out? Why do these rituals come up in these kind of situations? Because people want to have some semblance of control over things that are completely random. Well, maybe not completely random, but they are things that they don't have any influence over. I think about me and my treasure hunting in the Phantasy Star Online game. That I can't tell you the number of times I was trying to get one of the very powerful weapons that I was trying to find. And I would constantly go back and recheck, am I finding the right enemy? Do I have the drop rate correct? It's like somehow my knowing was going to make things better. It was me feeling like I was losing. It was me feeling like I didn't have any kind of influence on what was happening, or that there was something that I could do in order to make things better or improve my chances. And I know that that's not the case. Yet my brain still goes to that. That's what my brain wants to do because we want to have control. It helps us to feel more secure. And this is one of those things where control really is just an illusion. And how does this control show up? Well, in one thing, it's in boundaries, physical boundaries and political boundaries. Who determines around here what is Washington State and what is Idaho or what is Oregon? Well, people came to arbitrary decisions of this is what the state of Washington is going to be, and as soon as you cross over here, you're now in Idaho, or you're now in Oregon, or you're now in a completely different country. Now you're in Canada. And even then, we have the Cascade Mountains. I mean, most of the population in Washington is on the western third of the state. And that has even created a divide where, I mean, over here in the district that I live in, it's like the only Republican district in Washington State. And I'm kind of hoping that these midterms will change that. However, there are a lot of people that live on the east side of Washington, and they blame everything that's happening on those who are on the other side of the Cascade Mountains. And you have people on the west side of this state that look at us over here, and we're effectively rednecks. We are so rural and disconnected from what's actually going on that, oh my gosh, I remember going to a concert back when I was a Christian. We went to a Chris Tomlin concert, and we ended up hearing at the very beginning that he had a performance in the Seattle area, and he was going to the next day come over to the Tri-Cities here, and he was talking with some people backstage who were helping with the actual event, and they were just kind of talking with him and shooting the breeze, and they're like, yeah, so where are you going to go next? And he's like, oh, I'm going to go over to Kennewick in the Tri-Cities area. And these people on the west side of the state looked at him and they said, why would you ever want to go there? That's what something like a physical boundary can do. And so long as we have that physical boundary, we can easily place the blame on and ownership of what's going on based on that physical boundary. Whatever is happening here in Washington state, we can blame on the Democrats on the west side of the state. That's one way of owning or passing the buck on control when, we kind of have a say in what's going on here too. One of the other things outside of politics that we can really, really see control is actually through religion. There is a reason why there are so many people now, like Laura Anderson and her group at the Center for Trauma Resolution and Recovery, that are working to help people overcome spiritual trauma that came from very controlling religious groups. What does this look like? It looks like someone else who is telling you what you can and can't do, what is right, what is wrong, what's good, what's bad, and they're the ones who are drawing the lines. And if you do something bad, these are the things that you can do in order to make things better again, to get on the good side of whatever the authority figure is, whether we're talking, say, a pastor or preacher, if we're talking about a priest, if we're talking about elders, that's the word I was looking for. If we're talking about an organization, or if we're talking about an all-powerful and all-knowing deity. This is something that I've had to reconcile with when I stepped away from the Christian church with my deconstruction. I think about all of the prayers that I prayed. I think about all of the shame that I carried and all of the conversations that I had with people within these churches that were saying, I'm so sorry, please don't send me to hell, because if I did that, then I would exert some kind of control over a terrible situation. Hey, I am now on God's good side. I'm not going to go to hell. Trying to be in control over the afterlife of other non-believers. I had this firm belief that if I prayed to God, if I prayed to Jesus for him to enter into the lives of these people that I knew were non-believers, then somehow I had some kind of control over their fates. Why? In order to avoid hell. You'll kind of notice a trend here. The more afraid we are of something, the more we want to exert control over it. The more we fear something, the more we believe we have to placate it, and that is releasing that sense of fear. And again, this is how control is an illusion. I mean, I'm not someone who believes in a hell anymore. And there isn't anything that can really convince me that there is a place of eternal damnation. I can take a look at what's going on now and be like, yeah, I'm living in hell right now because of all of the fear, because of all of the bigotry, because of the racism, the bids for power, the discrimination, whatever. These show me that hell is real, but it's something I'm already living in. It is experiencing a world that doesn't love. It's experiencing a world that is really giving into its fears and insecurities. And I guess that's a really important thing. We want to exert control because we feel insecure. If we have control over something, then we don't have to be afraid of it. We don't have that insecurity. And whether we're talking about something as intangible as an afterlife, as spirituality, of what happens with a soul after death, or whether we're talking about something as prominent as finances, or going back to the sports analogy of being able to somehow influence someone, a team, a group of people in order to get the outcome that we're looking for, it removes a lot of insecurities. This is what control is. It is trying to help us overcome our fears and overcome our insecurities in order to feel like things are stable and peaceful. And in a world as chaotic as the one that we live in, things are rarely ever that stable and that secure. It's one of the reasons why I will say quite frequently, this crazy ride that we call life. There is so much that we can't control. And in fact, I'm reminded of one of the things that I've had conversations with my therapist about quite frequently is how the anxiety that we experience oftentimes comes from trying to control something that we cannot control. I cannot control what other people are going to do. I can't control what someone else is going to say. I can't control how someone else is going to think. I can't even control whether or not I get an interview for a job. I have no control over any of that. And so I can experience anxiety over these things that I want to have control over, but I don't have that control. This is how control is an illusion. And I want to wrap things up here looking at a statement, or a quote really, from the Artemis II mission specialist Christina Cooch. I think she says this so perfectly. And this describes actually this complex called the overview effect. And you'll kind of notice this is actually where the concept of this topic came from when I heard this earlier today. Christina Cooch says, the overview effect is when you're looking through the cupola and you see the Earth as it exists with the whole universe in the background. You see the thin blue line of the atmosphere. And then when you're on the dark side of the Earth, you actually see this very thin green line that shows you where the atmosphere is. What you realize is every single person that you know is sustained and inside of that green line, and everything else outside of it is completely inhospitable. You don't see borders. You don't see religious lines. You don't see political boundaries. All you see is Earth, and you see that we are way more alike than we are different. the overview effect is something that's actually just come to my attention really just within the last 24 hours as I've been hearing more and more about the Artemis 2 mission. It is this complex that when you are in space and you see the Earth, it really changes how you view the world. And I think it's something that has impacted every single astronaut that has ever been up there. When you see the world and truly how fragile it is, then it's hard to see these ways that humanity has tried to control the world, control our environment, to create this safety, to help us with these fears and these insecurities. I do not harbor any ill will towards anyone on the other side of the Cascades here in Washington State, because they are trying to live the best that they can. I don't harbor any ill will towards any of the Republicans and the MAGA people here on the eastern side of Washington. They are trying to do the best that they can. We are all living in fear. We are all experiencing insecurity, and we're all just trying to do everything that we can in order to control an outcome that we honestly have no control over. That is how all of this is an illusion. It's just unfortunate that some of the people who are the most pronounced and outspoken about this kind of control are some of those who they say that they are following a God and Savior of love, and really it's just about hate. Man, I can't tell you how many times I have seen the quote, there's no hate like Christian love. And I used to be that kind of person. Now I'm just trying to do the best that I can in order to love people so that we can all work together. When we are working together, let's face it, we have more of an opportunity to make changes and overcome these fears. I'm not going to say that we have control over things, because Mother Nature has her own notions of what needs to happen. And there's no way that we can control that. So when you are finding yourself experiencing this fear, experiencing these insecurities, you can recognize what they are. You can recognize that this is our way of trying to make these feel easier or stable, I could say. And that's us trying to be in control. And in my experience, giving up control and just trying to do the best that I can has actually garnered me a lot more freedom than when I was within these spiritual and religious circles that were telling me that this is what I need to do, this is what I need to say, this is how I need to be in order to have that security. I hope that you found this inspiring. I hope it inspired you as much as it's inspired me. Again, I'm talking about these things because I need to be reminded of them too. So keep doing the hard work. Keep showing up. Keep doing the best that you can. That is how you're going to be the hero in your story. And if there's anything that I can do to help you out with that, please get in touch. We'll talk again next week. And until next time, live strong for today.